Welcome to the Mobilize section. Today, me and Robbie are going to take you through the shoulder. Now, this is the most complex joint in the human body. A couple of great analogies to think about. One is a golf ball sitting on a tee, surrounded by some quite small muscles that comprise your rotator cuff, which we'll talk about in a minute. But that same fragility in terms of it doesn't have, like the hip joint, for example, a big socket that protects it, allows for a lot of complex movement. You think about what a shoulder can do, it can really explore a wide range of motion in a lot of different vectors. So, the key bone that comprises your shoulder joint essentially is the humerus, this upper arm bone, and the way it sits in this cavity that then also blends into the scapula or shoulder blade. We've talked about the shoulder blade individually as well, but what makes these two joints very interesting is their interrelationship. And really that's the thing with all joints is there's no true sense of isolation in terms of them living on their own. It is a full spectrum understanding of the way that then speaks to its neighboring joints, the muscles, ligaments and tendons. All that tissue has a role to play. And we'll talk about how we deal with that in our routines to follow. For now, we're going to talk about the major connections. We've got the scapulae, we've got the humerus, we've got this space for the shoulder to live in. And then for the musculature, we've got the lats, that big muscle on the side of your body that blends all the back tissue into your hips and shoulders. From there, you've got the triceps and biceps, this upper arm tissue that surrounds the humerus, this upper arm bone. You've got your pectorals, and then you've also got areas like your traps, the muscle here on the top of your shoulder. So from that anatomy, you can start to see that with that movement complexity and the ability to make lots and lots of different shapes, one of the first things that we need to do is find out, do we have sufficient, for example, shoulder flexion? Shoulder flexion is lifting your arm straight above your head, and now without losing shape through my spine, so I'm not doing this kind of arching to make it look like I have more range, nor am I bending my elbow or doing anything funny like that. It's can I just lift my upper arm and place my bicep somewhere near my ear. From there, if you're finding that a little bit challenging, like it sort of gets tight somewhere around about here, but there's no sharp pain, there's nothing that's very, very alarming to you, in which case you'd seek the help of a qualified medical practitioner. What we can then do is start to look at some simple tools to see, for example, is it being stopped here because of neurological tension? And what we mean by neurological tension is that there is a movement restriction there that's not really born of a structural deficit. So for example here, let's say that as Robbie was lifting his arm, the top of the humerus was actually hitting the cavity space and blocked by the top of this bone here, then that would be a structural issue which would need a little bit more complicated rehabilitation. If it's more just your tissue's tight in this area, or the feeling of it is, and you just have never been here for a while, we can use a concept of release work to see if we can make some temporary changes to that. So what we might do here is say, to acquire this range, we can look at one of the big culprits, which might be tight lats. And then to hit our lats, we'd come down to lying position. We'd get the ball that comes with your step-up box, and we place that in the fleshy tissue of the lat muscle, and then lever the weight onto it gently. So with all of these concepts, there shouldn't be any searing pain, it shouldn't be the most painful thing you've ever done. It should just be more a discomfort. Can be relatively intense to start with, but it should back off. You're going to keep yourself in a parasympathetic or low tone nervous state by focusing on deep breathing in and out through the nose. And you're going to let that tension, the perception of it, slowly start to release. Once you've held it for about 60 to 90 seconds, and again you'll need to assess both sides, I'm just going to do the left here. We go back and we'll check again to see if you have a little bit easier access to that shoulder flexion position. So the checking and rechecking allows you to keep assessing how each of these modalities helps you. And you keep choosing based on the joint that you're working on. Sometimes it'll be a strengthening that you need, sometimes more stretching. We want to give you those educational points so that you can make the best decisions for yourself. From there, you'll go and do a little bit of stretch work. And so we can put you in a position where it's a little bit easier now to recruit the musculature you need and have a little bit of support. So we call this the box child's pose. So with your upper arms on the box itself, I'm just going to sit back into it and form a gentle connection. And you'll see here I'm in that shoulder flexed position with my arms by my ears. And I'm just working on trying to release and relax my hips and my pelvis so that they're not holding lots of tension and preventing the stretch. Again, 30, 60, 90 seconds, depending on your comfort level with this. And from there, gently come back up by pushing into the floor and the box, come to a standing position, and then recheck. Is it getting progressively easier to acquire this position, or is it staying still a little bit stubborn? And then finally, what we're going to look at here is, can we create some tension in the position that you hope to acquire? So let's say from here, you're getting to a comfortable place, either left or right, depending on which one you've done, and you now want to bed that in. What I can do is start to grab, for example, the ball. I can squeeze it, hold that tension everywhere in my body, and I'm trying to drive into as much of that shoulder flexion position as I can, resisting any breaks in my body shape here. Hold that 10 seconds or so, gently come out of that, shake it all off a little bit, and then final retest, and that should feel the nicest that it has today. Remembering that for any of these mobility protocols, it's going to be temporary in its results unless you demand that of your body on a repeated basis. And there's a great phrase that kind of sums this up, which is, if you don't use it, you'll lose it. So with that thought, play around with that, try both sides, and we look forward to seeing you for more shoulder work. See you soon.